Hey, what is up guys? So we are going to be doing two deck profiles in one video today, and these are both OCG Nekroz. Now there are two different ways to play the deck. That's why I'm going to give you guys two different deck profiles, and then that way from there you can decide which playstyle you like better. And like I mentioned, these are OCG deck lists, so that's why you might see some awkward cards. You're like, what the heck is this? I'll get to that later on, but basically it's because the OCG has a different ban list, and this is supposed to be Harpy's Feather Duster, but you can definitely swap it in with other cards in the TCG, because in the TCG we don't really have any restrictions on the Nekroz archetype, whereas the OCG, they got a lot of things hit in the archetype that just kind of watered the deck down a little bit, but it's still relatively strong, as you guys can see, because it just still recently has been topping. But anyways, like I said, these are both great builds of the deck, as they are top decks, but they're just two different ways to play them. So the first build that I'm going to be showing you guys is more of a reactive version, which means that you can kind of react to what your opponent throws up on board. The other one is more of an all-in. You have very few answers to your opponent once they go for the Trishula, which is the most common one actually thrown out in the game, especially since Unicore is also at 1 in the OCG. But nonetheless, the deck is still basically, I would say, a Trishula deck. The other card is still definitely great, but more than likely the card that's going to be ruining you is this, just because it has massive attack, because sometimes people run Lance and they get over your stuff. But anyways, let's go and jump right into the deck profile. If you guys are just here in NetDeck, I'll put both of the YDK files down below in that description box, and you can go ahead and just download it and then import it into your folder. But let's go ahead and get started. So first off, there's 3 Gishki chains in the TCG. I'm going to be mentioning the TCG a lot here because, obviously I would say most of my viewers are in the TCG, and you might be wondering why the heck are they playing this card over certain other cards. Now, Gishki chain is a fantastic addition to the deck because these cards are hit on the OCG list. Pretty much I would recommend you to play 3 Manjus over these cards, but if you don't happen to have Manjus, or they just rise up in price and you can't afford them, although, well, I don't know, maybe these will all be common, who knows. More than likely these are all like basically hidden arsenal rarity anyways, but for whatever reason, if you just happen to not have these, I guess Gishki Chain could be a good secondary card, or you can just go ahead and run both if you'd like to. Next up, there's 1 Armageddon Knight, and I saw this in a lot of other builds, and I really don't understand the players that play Armageddon Knight over Mathematician. Some players play Mathematician, some play Armageddon Knight. It basically does the same thing, except for with Mathematician you get a draw, and you can send other cards to the graveyard, which we'll get into later. But the thing is, I overall just think Mathematician is just a much better card than Armageddon Knight, but whatever, there's been multiple people that have been winning with Armageddon Knight. If you guys know the reason, I have no idea why the heck they're playing Armageddon Knight over the Mathematician. Perhaps because it's also level 4, I'm thinking, well, maybe you could go for some rank 4s, but overall, I think it's just really used to send the Djinn to the graveyard. And there are much faster ways to do it. You can go Tour Guide, and you can actually make something. So, like I said, there's different builds, but for whatever reason, the OCG, maybe they just love Armageddon Knight because it's already at 1, and therefore we must play it. I really don't know. I think Mathematician is just overall better. Next up, 1 Senju. This one lets you add the Ritual Monster card. Now, Manju is the real guy over here. He lets you add the Ritual Monster, or just a Ritual card or a Ritual spell. So he's much better than Senju, but in the OCG it is at 1/1. So therefore, I highly recommend you just to play multiple copies of Manju before you decide to even think about Senju. They both have the same attack and defense, and they're both light, they're both level 4, so there's really few arguments, I guess, unless you really just like the artwork or something like that. But this card is just overall much better. 1 Djinn Releaser Rituals. Before, they were always side decking this card. I'm like, I don't understand why, and then they eventually adopted to main decking it, because basically once you get this card out, well, you don't get this card out. You basically get the monster out by using him as one of the tribute materials for the ritual summon. Essentially, you can lock your opponent out of the game. That's why this build is playing 3 Smashing Ground. There's also other builds that play more traps, but for the most part, Smashing Ground has been the more popular choice because it gets rid of it ASAP. Then you can make your card and go off from there. So this card is very, very key in the game. Sometimes you can also Levier and get it back. That's also an important thing to do. This version doesn't XYZ as hard as the other version, which I will be showing you later, but for the most part, it's just a fantastic card to throw in the graveyard as quickly as possible. Next up, 3 Shirt, or Shrit, however you like the pronunciation. I think it's Shrit, but there's some people like, no, it's Shirt. I'm like, that's a Shrit. But anyways, there's playing 3 copies of him. He's being able to, you use him, and you can use him for the entire tribute. Almost reminds me of Gishki's. Then there's 1 copy of Decisive Armor. He gets to boost him up to 1,000 attack. He has other effect, but for the most part, that's generally what he's used for. Trishula has Trishula's effect. Then the Valkyrius over here. You can tribute 1 or 2 monsters from your hand and or your side of the field. Then if you do, you get to draw 1 card for each tributed. Sometimes if you happen to have a cloggy hand or you've exhausted some of the search ability, I guess that could be definitely used in that aspect. But again, for the most part, it pretty much comes down to this card. And there was someone that commented, it was like, Asian Eyes, the deck isn't always about Trishula. Well, I mean, there's also Unicorn, which is fantastic, but Bryonek is also definitely good. But 9 times out of 10, it's always just go for the Trishula as many times as possible. This one does have more attack, but I think this effect is just probably the best. And then there's also the Gungnir, which basically protects all your monsters, well, all your Nekroz, or Nekroz, whatever you like to prefer to call them. Then there's 3 copies of Bryonek, which searches out pretty much any of the deck, and then 1 unicorn. Now, in the OCG, you can only play 1. So in the TCG, I highly recommend you play multiples. I mean, this can search out Bryonek, which searches out everything anyways, and it lets you recycle. So fantastic card. If you have the option to play 3, highly recommend you guys to play 3. Next up, there is 2 copies of Nekroz of Colossolus. You can actually consider it 3 because of Reinforcement of the Army, but Reinforcement of the Army is at 1 in the OCG, so that's why I saw a lot of other builds trying to play 2 and then 1 because you can recycle your cards anyway with Unicorn, but now that Unicorn is at 1, that build has completely fallen out of favor because this card is needed to search out the rituals. Next up, no, this is not actually Griffin's Feather Duster. It's Harpy's Feather Duster because that is legal in the OCG. So that's why I just wanted to put that there because it's a very similar looking card. Next up, Dark Hole. And then Gold Star can let you search out pretty much anything. I feel like the card is kind of unnecessary in the deck, but I mean, if you really need to search out that Smashing Ground, and you need to go off in this deck, because when you shut down your opponent, you want to make sure that they can't throw up something, next turn. So if you're able to go for that Smashing Ground, then make your play, you're much better off than Gold Sarking waiting for it. But there were several builds that play Gold Sark, so I guess, if you really need that Smashing Ground ASAP, that can work. Whereas Duality, if you Duality into Smashing Ground or something like that, you couldn't have a rebuttal play. This deck is basically only oriented around special summoning anyways, and you don't need your normal summon in the deck. There's only 1 Preparation of Rites because in the OCG you can only play 1. In the TCG, there's no reason why you wouldn't want to play 3 of these, so yeah, you definitely want 3 of these, but again, this is the OCG deck profile. Next up, 3 Smashing Grounds. It just deals with the Trishula as soon as possible because if you can't special summon, essentially is basically what it comes down to, or you can technically Book of Moon it too, but for the most part, it just makes it so you can get rid of that monster, and then from there you can go off. Next up, this is like very common in their builds. They're all playing the double Exomere, 1 Caledomere, sometimes they're playing 2 of these, and then the Nekroz Illusion, or I think this is it Curse in the TCG. They changed the name in this. Let me just look this up for you guys real quick. Is it called Nekroz or is it Nekroz? I think it's called Nekroz. They always change the names. Oh, it's Nekroz Illusion. No, it can't. I think it's got to have a different name. But anyways, yeah, this card's name is different. Just if you're playing on DevPro, it's Illusion. You can type that in. But I know the name is different in the TCG. But anyways, next up, there is 3 copies of MST, 1 copy of Book of Moon, and 2 Torrential Tributes. They also have been playing Compulse in the OCG, but the thing is, I feel like a lot of times when Torrential is there, it's only good before they summon this card. After that, you're going to have to summon your monster and then then you're going to have to activate Torrential because there's no way that they would just try to keep on throwing stuff on board if they know that you potentially have a Torrential. So the deck does not run a lot of back row, so I mean, maybe they are anticipating a Compulse, so they'll be like, I'll go summon again, and then you can have a really good Torrential. But for the most part, I feel like once they get out Trishula, they don't really want to do anything other than attack with Trishula until Trishula's gotten rid of, because they don't want to summon a bunch of monsters unless, of course, they're OTKing and then getting Dark Hold. Now, the deck is very consistent and it can recycle relatively hard, so some players will be more hesitant to try to push really fast, but sometimes you'll notice that you'll run out of, basically, you'll exhaust your deck by using all the cards in it, and then from there you can just lose because you don't have any more plays. Kind of like how I think Shaddoll's kind of work in a sense, where you just run out of Shaddall monsters, and then from there your opponent just simply wins because you exhausted your deck. As far as the extra deck, it's all about the Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. Then there's the Blackwing Nathung. and then there's the Herald of Arc. Like, I feel like this is the only card that is really important here. Highly recommend you guys to play multiple copies, but because of the difference in the TCG and OCG list, they're just playing one. But for the most part, you won't be making really any of these cards. I'll mouse over them real quick just so you guys can see the name if you're unfamiliar with anything. This is one card that is a newer card, but I don't really think that most of the stuff is necessary in the extra deck, except for all you card or number 17. You do need something that is a rank 3 that can detach immediately if you're playing the tour guide build, which is the next build that I'm going to be showing you guys. It's a much faster build. These are not the cards in the side deck. I just wanted to mention these real quick. If you're playing in the TCG, obviously you want 3 copies of this. 3 copies of this if you're playing the other version that I'm about to show you guys. Unicorn can definitely be played at 3, and same thing with Call of Solace. Or you can do that other build that I mentioned before, which was you can do 2 Rhoda and then 1 of these, or you can do 2/2, whatever you want to do, just to make the deck as fast as possible. Then obviously Snatch Steal is legal in the TCG, so once your opponent makes a Trishula that has an effect where you can't special summon, you can go ahead and take that and then have a nice day after you do that. I'm sure your opponent will be pretty upset about that. But for the most part, the builds are very similar in a sense, but there's like a 10 card difference in this different build over here, which I'm about to show you guys. So this is the different build. This is the build that I actually really like because it's just a faster version of the deck. And for the longest time when I was playing Tour Guide, everyone was like, oh my gosh, Azneyes, you just love Tour Guide, and the effect failures only if this guy had a VLS, so this guy would be my hero. But for the most part, I like this build so much better because it's much faster. There's a random new card, Pero in here, but for the most part, I actually just prefer this build because it's so much faster, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Pretty much every deck now can OTK or throw up a field. Like the mass heroes are also very popular, especially if you play in the OCG list. There's so many mass hero players. I just feel like just being able to be fast is so much better in the game, especially with the way the game is going, where like you get OTK'd out of nowhere out of some random deck, especially like Morphtronics or something like that. So I like this build much better. But anyways, this is version B over here. I wish I knew the guys' names and I can give them a shout out, but yeah, like I said, these are all OCG lists. So there's this card which is interesting. A lot of players don't play this card, but I'll briefly read its effects so you guys can maybe think about trying out this card yourself. Also wanted to briefly mention really quick that there's a card called Secret Village. I don't know if people were side decking this. It was actually used at one point because against the Klees absolutely cry to this card. So let me go briefly read the effect. It's if you control a spellcaster type monster and your opponent does not, your opponent can't activate spell cards, and if you control no spellcaster type monsters, you can't activate any spell cards. So what that comes down to is basically anything that's not spellcaster, unless they're getting rid of your monster, they can't play spells. So certain decks can simply just lose to this. At one point, spellbooks were actually running this card. This card just overall, it's a random card that can just instantly give you an instant win condition. Now this card is a spellcaster and also Mathematician is a spellcaster, so I'm not sure how popular it will be in the TCG, but like I said, in Shadal's or something like that, or against Klees in general, this card is a fantastic card. But this is a spellcaster and has the effect of it's attributed by a card effect. You can add one spellcaster type Nekroz ritual monster from your deck to your hand. If this card is banished, you can send one Nekroz monster from your deck to the graveyard, except for the same copy of himself. You can only use his effect once per turn and only once that turn. So that's his effect. Pretty decent, and like it shows you how crazy this deck is. Like I look at this card, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. It's got like double effects, and obviously you can banish cards real easy in the deck with all the mirrors to recycle your stuff. But they don't even care about this card because the deck, honestly, guys, it really doesn't need it. The deck is fast enough, but I think it might have just been in like an attack or something like that. Next up, there's the one Senju and the one Manju. Again, highly recommend you guys to play multiple Manjus. Next up, 3 Mathematician, and this is essentially used to dump the Jin in the graveyard as quickly as possible. Tour Guide also allows you to go for a rank 3 play. Usually, I like to go for all you card, even if it's first turn. That way, my opponent can't have any set cards that I don't want to deal with during the next turn. Even if they kill all you card, it doesn't really bother me at all, because if I stop them from special summoning, most decks at that point, they have to go on set heavy, and if they, aren't able to activate, a DeeDee or something, it just gives you extra free advantage, whereas number 17 is just kind of a beater anyways. But you need something that can detach immediately, and I think all you card is a fantastic choice. Again, as long as you know that they will be playing a deck that has back row, or that maybe you just know that they happen to have back row, or maybe you just want to go for it because when they can't special summon, making this card is excellent anyways. But again, you have to get that detach effect. That's why a lot of players end up going for the number 17 first turn. So that's just a little tip for you guys. But next up, yeah, we got 3 tour guides. You can also make other things. At one point, I was trying Dante. Obviously, the OCG doesn't have the Burning Abysses, but I was trying out Dante, and sometimes you would have the worst mills, but you know, just having the card in the graveyard for some of the rituals, it's not bad at all because you get to banish them anyways. But next up, there is 3 of the Shrits. There is one, I think this is a tech card, it's Paracerubus. You can also send it to the graveyard with Mathematician, so I was like, well, maybe this deck was trying to have a rebuttal play that wasn't smashing ground. I think this card is very interesting. It just makes it so if you take any damage from an attack or an opponent's card effect, while this card is in your graveyard, you can banish this card, then target 1 card on the field, destroy it. And I was like, you know what, that's not bad, especially when you can Levier it and get it back. I just wish it was a tour guide target. It would just be so sexy. If it was a tour guide target, but unfortunately it's a beast, not a fiend. Otherwise, I would just play through this and everything. Next, he was playing 2 effect, which I do really like because sometimes they're just gonna try to get rid of your Trishula the Mate. Well, more than likely they'll try to put it face down or something like that. And let's say that they make something that can run over it as long as it gets like the boost or something like that. Effect Builder can definitely come in handy. And obviously, you don't want to go minus when you happen to have a field. So I think it's much better to use the effect Builder and go neg1 technically out of the hand rather than almost, well, you can argue it's neg3 or more because depending on what they hit. But yeah, Effect Builder, I still think it's an awesome card. Although Maxi has been more popular in the TCG because of the Satellar Knights and also the Burning Abysses. But Effect Builder, I still think it's an awesome card. Then there's the 1 Nekroz Decisive Armor, and then there's the 2 Trishula, the 2 Valkyrius, the 1 Gungnir, and 3 Bryanak, 1 Unicorn, and this one's playing 3 Colossus and 1 Reinforcement of the Army. I personally like to play as many of these as possible, and then you can run Rotas, and if they're dead cards, it doesn't matter because you want the deck to be as fast as possible. And then there's the Feather Duster, there's the Preparation of Rites. Again, I recommend you guys play 3. And then there's the 2 Exomir, the 1 Caldomir, and the 3 Nekroz Illusion. Again, I forgot what it's called. I apologize for that in the TCG, but they did change the name. 3 MSTs, and then 1 Book of Moon. As far as the extra deck, nothing is really different with this one. It does have a Dweller instead of, it was like XYZ Rebellion, I think was the other one that they were playing. But for the most part, you very rarely make any of the rank 4s. It's generally going to be rank 3, especially if you're playing the Tour Guide Mathematician build. Just recommend you guys to have Alucard and number 17 are the most important. Levier can be definitely used in some circumstances. Also having a Zen mains is really nice because again, the OCG does love the masked heroes, and it's good to have an answer to that relatively quick because obviously I just like Zen mains over most of the other options because the other options sometimes the heroes they set everything that they have, and if they have that one deck D Prison or something like that, then what is Dark Law's attack? I forgot off top. Is it 25? It's 24. Okay, I just remember this card could at least crash with it or something like that. But I guess you could technically get over him with the effect of number 17, but this card is just, it's really annoying for the deck to deal with. You can still activate a lot of the cards. They are discard effects, not send to the graveyard, so yeah, you can still go for their effects to like get the search out. I mean, you definitely go minus because you won't be able to use the cards that are in your graveyard for ritual material. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we covered most of the stuff that I want to talk about. Highly recommend you guys to play Snatch Steal in the deck. Whether you are doing Mirror Match or like this card is just fantastic against the deck in general anyways, because this deck basically, if you can get rid of the one monster, you can OTK them, whether it's through Econ or something like that. Well, I mean, the deck, again, it doesn't have too much back row. If you go back to the version A that I showed, some of them were playing like 1 Compulse, 1 Torrential, some played double Compulse. I personally, if I was going to do Mirror Match, I prefer Compulse, even though like Compulse is kind of a slower card. As far as traps go, as far as like getting rid of that one card, yeah, Smashing Ground, you could even, heck, you could run Fissure or just, well, in the TCG we have 2 Dark Holes and we have Regeki, so you might not even need to bother with the Smashing Grounds. You could just add the double Dark Hole and the Regeki, maybe a Smashing Ground if you want. But like I said, guys, these are 2 different builds of the same deck. I'd like to know, guys, what one you think is better. Maybe try it out yourself first, and I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts or anything on that. And I'll be doing a TCG version once we get all the cards. Hopefully we won't skip out on any of the cards. Like, it'd be such a scumbag thing to do, like Conan, and be like, oh, by the way, guys, you don't get Bryanak, because that can definitely change the deck. But you know, sometimes the OCG or the the TCG does troll us, and they make us wait forever to get that one card that we need. So hopefully they won't done goof us, and we will get everything. But like I said, let me know what build you like better. Do you like the faster build that lets you make it so your opponent can't special summon as quickly as possible, which is the version B? Or do you like the more consistent version where if your opponent makes it so you can't special summon, you have the smashing rounds, you have the traps, or something like that? I personally prefer the fast version, like I mentioned before. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has gotten to the point where almost everything can OTK you out of just really like nowhere, like 2 random cards, and you're just like, oh, well, I guess I lost. So I just like the version that is fast to keep up with the pace of the game. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. And again, if you guys want to download them, the YDK files are down below in the description box. If you don't know how to download them and how to install them into your game, I also have a video on a tutorial on that in the description box below. But thanks for watching, guys. Have some fun playing Nekroz, and I'll see you guys later. Azneyes out.